Federal agents say this was self-defense. But bystander video shows something very different. A U.S. citizen was shot multiple times during an immigration operation in an American city by masked federal agents. Now, state officials say they're locked out of the investigation, so the real question isn't just who fired the gun, it's who controls the use of force inside the United States and who gets held accountable when that force goes wrong. Here's what we know so far based on reporting. On January 24th, federal immigration agents shot and killed 37-year-old Alex Pretti in Minneapolis during a federal enforcement operation. Pretti was a U.S. citizen. He worked as an intensive care nurse. The Department of Homeland Security says a Border Patrol agent fired in self-defense after Pretti approached agents with a handgun and violently resisted attempts to disarm him. Federal officials later released an image of a gun they say Pretti was carrying. But bystander videos reviewed by Reuters show something different. At the start of the confrontation, Pretti appears to be holding a phone, not a gun. The footage shows federal agents pushing protesters to the ground. Pretti steps between an agent and two women, raises his arm as he's pepper sprayed, and is then taken down by multiple agents. During the struggle, someone can be heard shouting what sounds like a warning about a gun. Video appears to show an agent removing a firearm from Pretti while he is pinned on his hands and knees. Moments later, an agent fires 4 shots into Pretti's back. Additional shots are then heard. Agents initially step back, then attempt medical aid, while other agents keep bystanders away. Minnesota officials say federal agents blocked state investigators from accessing the scene. Governor Tim Walz and the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension say they were prevented from starting an independent investigation. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said Pretti was not peacefully protesting and accused him of attempting violence. Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara confirmed Pretti was a lawful gun owner with no criminal record beyond traffic violations. The killing sparked large protests in Minneapolis and across the country. Federal agents deployed tear gas and flashbang grenades. The incident followed another fatal shooting of a U.S. citizen, Renee Good, earlier this month during federal operations in Minnesota. Several key facts remain unclear. Whether Pretti ever drew his weapon, the exact sequence between the firearm being removed and the shots being fired, and which agency and which officer fired which shots. Now let's move beyond the surface facts. The first power dynamic here is federal authority versus state authority. This is not just a shooting. It's a jurisdictional confrontation. Federal agents carried out an operation inside a major U.S. city, used lethal force, and then blocked state investigators from accessing the scene. That's not coordination. That's an assertion of federal supremacy. The second dynamic is narrative control versus visual evidence. The official DHS framing relies on a familiar claim: self-defense during violent resistance. But the existence of multiple civilian videos complicates that story. Much of the coverage assumes that the presence of a gun automatically justifies lethal force. That assumption is rarely questioned. There are two main interpretations. The first is federal self-defense escalation. Under this view, agents encountered a lawful gun owner who physically interfered with an operation. In a chaotic struggle, agents perceived an imminent threat, especially once a firearm was identified. From this angle, lethal force is framed as a split-second decision in an unstable crowd. But this interpretation rests on one key assumption: that the threat was still immediate at the moment the shots were fired. The second interpretation is preemptive dominance signaling. Under this view, the shooting reflects an aggressive enforcement posture meant to deter interference with federal operations. Once agents lost control of the crowd, the priority may have shifted from de-escalation to force projection. From that perspective, blocking state investigators is not procedural, it's strategic. Here's what much of the mainstream coverage doesn't really ask. Why were heavily armed, masked federal agents conducting visible street-level operations in a protest-heavy city? Why was crowd control mixed with immigration enforcement? And why was state oversight excluded immediately after a civilian death? Those aren't tactical accidents, they're political choices. In the short term, this escalates tensions between federal agencies and Democratic-led states. Minnesota officials are openly questioning federal legitimacy. That weakens interagency coordination well beyond this case. It also radicalizes public response. Protest turnout surged after the shooting, not before. That creates a feedback loop. More enforcement leads to more resistance. More resistance leads to more force. Over time, this sets a precedent. If federal agents can conduct lethal operations, deny state access, and control the investigation, accountability shifts upward, away from local voters and local courts. This matters beyond immigration. It applies to protests, civil unrest, and future federal crackdowns. So who benefits? Federal agencies gain operational freedom. The administration reinforces a tough-on-resistance posture, and national narratives of law versus chaos grow stronger. And who loses? State authority, civilian trust, lawful gun owners caught in ambiguous encounters, and the legitimacy of local policing. There's another effect, too. This chills lawful protest. If stepping in, even verbally or physically, to shield others can end in lethal force, people think twice about showing up at all. Several questions now matter more than anything else. Will full, unedited body cam footage be released? Will Minnesota successfully assert jurisdiction over the investigation? Does the Department of Justice step in, or does DHS retain control? Are similar federal operations continuing in other cities? And does Congress move to restrict federal enforcement authority inside states? But the biggest question is this. If this shooting is ruled justified, what limits, if any, remain on federal force inside U.S. cities? Because the answer to that goes far beyond Minneapolis.